Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Holly, and today I'm going to be using patterned vinyl and an opaque sticker decal from the Vinyl Cottage. So this came in a subscription box that I believe came in February. So I'm starting off with two tumblers. One's a 16 ounce and one is a 20 ounce. The 20 ounce, I'm going to be removing the bottom. It's a tumbler from Steel Magnolia, and you can just pop those bottoms right off. And so I'm going to give it a little glitter butt is what you call it when you fill the bottom with glitter. Only because those tumblers, when I use epoxy, they tend to wobble, and that drives me crazy. So that's really the only reason I'm popping off the bottom. If you don't have an issue with wobbly bottoms, you can definitely keep yours on. As usual, I sanded both tumblers with an 80 grit sanding block and wiped them down with rubbing alcohol and paper towel. I'm also keeping the lid on as I apply the vinyl because I want the seam of the vinyl to be on the back side of the tumbler. So I like when you're holding your tumbler, the thumb that's facing your mouth, I like that to be the seam side, and then your fingers or the part that's facing whoever's looking at you, I like that to be where the decal goes. I had a little bit of the vinyl that was just slightly higher on one side, so I'm using electrical tape to even out that line and then using my craft knife to cut off that excess. I also put electrical tape on the bottom of both of the tumblers, and then I used my little cutter that you can see there on the table to trim that off to make it an even line. So now I'm going to apply a tacket. This is a pastel tumbler. It has, I'm not sure if that's a pink or a lavender, but it has some pinkies, some mauves, greens, and I wanted the colors to kind of be really bright in some areas, not the entire tumbler. So it really, I wanted to add some bright glitters to make those shamrocks really pop out. And so I chose to do a purple over some of the pinky shades, or lavender, I'm not sure what it is. And then I'm going to let that sit a little bit before I use a dry chip brush to carefully dust off the excess glitter. While that is drying, I'm using UV resin with two greens mixed together, and I'm going to put it right in the center of the bottom of that tumbler to create the first inner circle of my glitter butt. Now the outer circle, my phone went dead and it didn't record, but I will later when my phone actually has battery again, I do show you how I finish it. Sorry about that. I'm using a UV flashlight instead of a UV lamp to cure this glitter. And as soon as that is cured, I'm going to flip it over and use my chip brush to dust off the excess purple. And then, like I said, I'm going to do one more layer, so I have to reapply the tacket to the purple, sprinkle the glitter on again, and then repeat that process with the remaining glitters that I'm using. Okay, so same thing with the green. I did have to do two applications. So the straight green color is from Glitter Heart Co. It's called Army Green. And then the mix is from PDB Creative Studios. It has some little chunky bits in it. I did also have to do two layers of that. So those shamrocks got a little thick, so I had to squish those down really good. The pink glitter I'm using is from Glitter Dip Sips, and that is called Watermelon Sugar. I have two of the same watermelon sugars, but one is a thicker cut. The one that I prefer is I think she calls it her extra fine, maybe her fine. It's a 0.05 cut. So that's the one that I used. And for the ring around the outside for my glitter butt, that is Biscotti from Maestra Creations. That's a really pretty mix. I also use that on the smaller tumbler. And then here's the two greens, so PDB Trust Fund, and then a Glitter Heart Co. Army Green. And then I also use from Glitter Dipped Sips, the purple is called Ursula. So those are the glitters, and now I'm going to spray seal it 3 times with a clear gloss, or it doesn't have to be gloss, it's just a clear spray paint. So I'm going to go ahead and spray that 3 times. I'm using Krylon. Also, what you didn't see me do is spray paint this outside, and that's because it was really dark. So I used Color Shop Black, I used a pink, I've used that pink before in videos, and then I used a Krylon purple. I will link those spray paints below. I taped off the bottoms because I didn't want the spray paint getting on the bottom because I'm not going to apply any epoxy this time around. I am going to apply the exact same colors of glitter that I did with my first tumbler. I'm going to use the hang method again. I really like applying glitter using epoxy, just a thin layer of epoxy. and I'm going to make sure that I avoid getting epoxy on the bottom of the tumbler. So after I apply the epoxy, I'm going to hold my glitter up pretty high so it falls. If I want sort of a scatter appearance, I will hold my hand up higher. If I want it to be a little thicker, I'll drop my hand lower, and I'm just hitting those colors. So if it's pink, I'll sprinkle some of the pink on there. It doesn't matter if purple gets on there too. If it's a black spray paint, I'll put my purple there, or my green. It doesn't matter really. So I just use the spray paint to sort of help guide me a little bit. If I fall off of those lines and my glitters overlap, it is totally fine. I made sure all the spray paint colors were covered so I couldn't see any just plain paint through, but not too thick with the glitter. So toward the end, you should have something that looks like this, where all the colors are mixing into one another, but they're not hiding each other. So you can see each of the vibrant colors poking out, and then it's sort of like an ombre or overlap next to the other colors. So this is going to sit overnight. It's going to dry. And then before I put epoxy on this, I need to seal it with quick coat. So I'm going to apply some quick coat while it's on my turner with my gloved hand, and just make sure that it gets in those little areas between the glitters. And I'm just going to let that sit. So this one, the first tumbler I did, has already received a layer of epoxy. It has already cured. So now I'm going to use an 80 grit sanding block. I'm going to sand down all the lumps and bumps, trying not to accidentally scrape into the actual glitter pieces, because they'll turn silver if I do that. And then I'm going to measure a piece of that vinyl, because I want to create some offsets and I don't have those. So I'm taking Vinyl Cottage's vinyl, the same vinyl that I wrapped around the tumbler. I'm going to scan it with my printer, load it into my Procreate on my iPad, use my iPad pen to create outlines of those clovers and the word lucky, because I'm not really sure what exactly I want to use yet. So I'm just outlining all of those. And then I'm going to save it as a transparent background. And I'm going to load this image, the colored image, again with the transparent background that I created onto my Cricut design space. And when you saw me measuring with the measuring tape, that's because once I have these images the way I want them, I have to make sure that they are exactly proportionate to the image that I scanned and the vinyl that I wrapped on my tumbler. Otherwise, they won't go on correctly. And even though I was really careful to measure, in the end, my vinyl outlines were still off a little bit, but I made it work. So I got lucky. They were just barely off. Lucky, that's funny because I'm putting the word lucky on these tumblers. So here's some images that I traced with my iPad on Procreate, following Vinyl Cottage's printed vinyl pattern. And then I am going to cut out each of those images separately so I can play with them. So I want to create some offsets. I want to make some smaller, some bigger. And before I send all of these images that I create to cut, I have to then put them back over the top of that pattern vinyl just to make sure that they match up. Now, I just want to say, I wouldn't do this if I didn't purchase the vinyl package from Vinyl Cottage. So if you are using someone's vinyl and you're saying, hey, I want to make that image, and then you use it and you put it on a tumbler and you sell it, don't do that. That's, if you want the image that somebody made, make sure that you buy it from them, or you pay them to make an image for you. So since I bought this vinyl, I was not worried about creating an offset for the image that I purchased to put on my tumbler. So just FYI that you can get in trouble for doing that, I'm sure, but also it's just not a very nice thing to do. So here I'm doing the offsets for the images that are going to go directly over the top of those glitter pieces that I put on my tumbler. If you want to see, this video is going to be way too long if I show you how to do an offset, but if you want to see how to do an offset, I have a whole bunch of videos linked where I do those, and I'll link some at the very end of this video so you can kind of get a good idea of how to create those offsets for yourself. So once I have the images the way I like them, like I said, you have to then resize that piece of vinyl to try to get it as close as you think you had it originally when you scanned it, and then try to layer these images over the top of the images within the vinyl pattern, and then send those all to your cutter, and you can cut out sheets of your vinyl. Once I have the images the size I want them, I just duplicate, change them as I need, play around with them, because like I said, I really am not sure exactly if this is going to work or which ones I want to use, how many I want to use, so I just cut out like 6-inch sheets of massive amounts of clovers. So here I am placing the green vinyl outline from the offset that I created in Cricut Design Space over the glitter green clover, and it turned out really cute. I'm going to continue with the other glitters. So I tried to cut out green sheets of vinyl. These are all color shifting vinyls too. So I cut out a green sheet that sort of has a purplish shift to it. I cut out purple that has a pink shift. And then I ran out of that and I messed up a lot of my vinyls. And so I had to recut out a sheet, but I didn't have that same color. So the next one that I did was sort of a pinky yellow shift, which worked out just fine. And then I also did a gold, a brushed gold. And what's the other color I did? Sort of a bronzy that had a green shift to it. So really, I just tried to match color for color and then sometimes not. So I didn't really, as long as it looked good, I stuck the vinyl on. If I thought, ooh, that color combination doesn't look very good, I pulled the vinyl off. And of course, I had to put a piece on the bottom. So I put the word lucky, and then I put a clover around the word lucky for the bottom. So now this one is ready to go. So it just needs to be spray sealed, or you could use quick coat. And because those vinyls were kind of tricky and I had to make some slices, I didn't put epoxy on this right away. I actually let this sit for an entire day before I put quick coat over the top of it, because I didn't want any of those vinyls to pull up at all. Here's a close-up of that pinky yellow shift vinyl. So it wasn't the perfect color, but it fit right in there because the green is a really light green, and so the yellow color shift looked cute. Then I decided, so this is after the layer of epoxy, and I've taken it off the turner, and I didn't like the words lucky that sort of blended into the clovers where there were little cutouts. So I used gold words for lucky, and I put those on 3 of the sections that were sitting between the clovers. And then I did one more layer of epoxy. Okay, so here's the 16 ounce. This is after it's had the quick coat dried, and then 1 layer of epoxy. So I've taken it off the turner. Now it's time to sand and clean up the edge. And I'm going to cut out those same images that I created with Cricut Design Space. And I'm going to use some of them. I'm not going to cut out a whole sheet like I did the others, but I'm just going to pick and choose what I want to use. And I'm going to put those over the top of this tumbler to create a peekaboo with spray paint. So I'm using a glossy sort of almond color spray paint, and then I'm going to use that same glitter from Maestra Creations, the Biscotti, to put over the top of it. And then I'll show you what that looks like. It turned out way better than I thought, and it actually changed my plan for what I was going to do with the tumbler. My idea was to have the outline of the big clover sort of in the background, and then layer the word lucky over the top of it. And there was supposed to be a section of the tumbler that I was going to leave without the stencil vinyl clover or the word lucky or whatever over the top of it, and just apply the Biscotti glitter, because that was the section that I was going to use to apply the decal. I forgot to do that. So that's why my plan changed, and it actually turned out to be cuter than I had even thought it would be. So that left me with that decal that says lucky that I didn't have a tumbler to put it on. So I had a tumbler laying around. I'm sure you've seen it in many of my videos because it's always sitting there in the background. So it came in handy today. So before I show you that tumbler, with this one, I'm going to burnish the glitter Biscotti using Tack It. So I just applied Tack It to the tumbler. I'm putting the biscotti on it, and then I'm going to burnish it. So I'm just going to rub it with my hand until that glitter falls off and it's smooth. Now, I did have to do this twice, and even after the second application, I still didn't wait long enough for that tacket to totally dry. And so when you see the final video, you can see like little speck. It looks blotchy. The color looks blotchy, which doesn't bother me, but it might bother somebody else. You know, I don't know, but it's cute. I just could have done a better job for sure. After you've burnished all the way around the tumbler and the bottom, not missing any sections, then it's time to start peeling off the little decals, and that's where your peekaboo happens. So I use my little pin pen to very carefully poke underneath the vinyl stencil, that blue vinyl stencil that I applied, to get those little decals up, or stencils, I guess. I'm not calling them the right thing. They're not decals. To pull up the little stencils, and then you can see that little peekaboo color through, and the biscotti glitter on top of the bright colors underneath just makes the tumbler pop. So it looked really cool. As I was pulling those up and seeing all the colors shine through, I was getting a little giddy about it. Once I have all those little pieces of vinyl pulled up, and double check my tumbler, triple check it a whole bunch of times to make sure there's no vinyl left, I'm going to seal it with a clear gloss 3 times and just let that sit completely and dry before applying epoxy. Okay, so here's the tumbler that's been sitting around my craft room since probably October, except what I did is, originally it was just glitter. I was going to do a marble effect with it, so I applied a whole bunch of glitters, blacks, purples, whatever, in a diagonal pattern, and I applied 2 layers of epoxy, and that's how it's been sitting since probably October, maybe even sooner than that. So what I did is, to add the gold, I did the power wash method. So I took the tumbler outside, I sprayed it with the power wash soap, and then I sprayed it with gold spray paint over the top of the power wash soap, rinsed the soap off, and it left this really cool glitter, or a really cool gold sort of worn look to it, which was perfect for St. Patty's Day and applying this sticker decal. After that, I went back to my permanent vinyl bin that had all the pieces from the other 2 tumblers that I had already cut out on my Cricut machine. I pulled out the gold pieces and I just started applying those, following the pattern of the marble glitter that I had already started on this tumbler, and moving my way around the tumbler, and I'm applying larger, smaller, medium size clovers all around the tumbler and then to the bottom, and then this tumbler is complete. One final change to this tumbler, I didn't like the height that I applied that vinyl decal. So I started to peel it off, and I was panicking just a little bit, but not too much, because I had already spray sealed this tumbler. After I did the power wash with the gold spray paint, I sealed it 3 times with a clear gloss spray paint, because when you apply a sticker decal that has a clear background, you'll see if the glitter is faded or rough or not glossy, you'll be able to see that. So I wanted it to be glossy, so I made sure I sprayed the glossy spray paint before applying the decal. So when I started to pull it up, I just panicked a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. I knew there was a small chance that I would pull up some of that paint with it, and I didn't. It pulled up just fine, and then I laid it back down, and it reapplied just perfectly. This tumbler is also going to be sealed with the clear spray paint, and then epoxy will be applied to it. Now, what I should have done is let those vinyl pieces adhere to the tumbler overnight, because they didn't have enough time to really stick really good to the tumbler. So when I applied the epoxy, 2 little sections lifted, the little skinny little sections in the middle of the clovers, you might be able to see it on this tumbler, I don't know if you can see it, lifted just a little bit. So it's just the far tumbler, the last one that I did with the power wash. There's a little piece of clover on the bottom that lifted, which I can repair, but it's going to need another layer of epoxy. Okay, and here they are the next day. So the shine is insane on this. I'm using Jessica Flynn's Flynn Sisters Boutique epoxy. I'll link that below. I've been linking it in all my videos. And the one that lifted is right here, right there. Right at the bottom, there's a little pokey section that lifted. And then I think that might be it for this one. But look at that shine. Look at the decal. Look how nicely it reapplied after I yanked it up because I didn't like the position of that decal. And then this one with the epoxy. So you can kind of see just a little bit. You can tell that it's a little choppy with the Biscotti glitter that I tried to burnish. It didn't burnish evenly, but it still looks really cool. And that Peekaboo is really pretty, and the sparkle. Oh, I just love this one. I'm in love with this one. And then the third tumbler with the Vinyl Cottage full wrap vinyl, and then the overlay with the glitter and the vinyl outline looks really pretty. I could not be happier with these. I really had fun making these. It was time consuming, but my brain was like constantly in check, trying to figure out how to fix things and what to do. And I love that process of making tumblers. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave any questions or comments below, and I will see you next time.